Hello everybody, I'm back again. It seems like it's been a minute since I've been able to review another Stormlight Archive book on this channel, but here we are again at the advent of Rhythm of War. I discovered the Stormlight Archive, this massive series from Brandon Sanderson earlier this year, and I remember a weird time in my channel when I was posting the reviews for those videos and they were not performing well, and I was like, well, I gotta keep talking about them because I love this story. Now it's one of the main things that my channel is recognized for, and they're like the biggest videos I have on this channel. So I think it goes without saying that I love the Stormlight Archive. So what do I think about this newest entry, The Rhythm of War? Well, in some ways it's hard to talk about this because it's the fourth book in the series, and frankly, I feel like if you have cared about the series through the first three books, you're likely to pick up the fourth one, especially if you're the type of person that gets swept up in a lot of hype. Because, and maybe it's because of the circles that I associate with, but like the hype for Rhythm of War right now is massive. And frankly, I think it's very deserved. The general consensus for the fan community, like the conglomerate consensus that I've seen, is that the second book in the series, Words of Radiance, has the best pacing and character work overall combined. And the primary complaint that most people have with Oathbringer is that there are large sections of this massively large book that seem like they could have been condensed or cut, because even though all of these books are huge, Oathbringer felt too big, even to people like me. And if you actually go back and watch that video review, I have a lot of positive things to say about Oathbringer because I felt like people were too negative overall. And I still hold a lot of those positions. Oathbringer has some of the best moments in the series. It also, if I'm looking at it in hindsight, is a little long. So then the question becomes, when Brandon releases Rhythm of War, and it's even bigger than Oathbringer, why and does it deserve it? If you happen to be picking up this entry on audiobook, it is a full 2 hours longer than Oathbringer, bringing the audiobook total up to 57 plus hours. And this is something I've never seen before. The audiobook is broken up into 5 separate downloads in Audible, so you can read them as 5 already larger than average books, which I feel like is a weird choice. Maybe you're just trying to show off how big your books are. I don't know. But how does the book flow? Does it justify its existence? So let's start off with the pacing. This is always a little bit subjective, but personally, I think the pacing in Rhythm of War might be better than any of the previous entries in the Stormlight Archive. I could be wrong. Part 1 of Rhythm of War is filled with tons of revelations. There's a lot of things that fans have been speculating about for a very long time, a lot of theories going around on the forums, and one of the surprisingly wonderful things that Rhythm of War starts doing early on is, hey, we're just gonna start answering these questions that fans have had, these theories that have been speculated upon. Here's the answer. Here's the answer. It does this back and forth. And on top of that, we're gonna have the characters in a lot of interesting and high stakes and unexpected situations right from the get-go. Some major confrontations between characters with different motivations that you think might be a climax thing happen right at the beginning of the book and have severe implications. And it doesn't take very long for things with severe implications to change the feel and the tone of the series, maybe like completely from the way that we expected it to be. But once we get settled into the status quo of the story and we realize that this is not exactly the book that we thought we were getting potentially, the stakes are high and we get a story that is extremely fast-paced. The characters are in danger. There is a lot of anxiety that I had when I was reading this, and one of the reasons that I read this book so fast was because I just genuinely had to know what was going to happen to these characters, which, if you remember Oathbringer, there were 2 parts of that 5-part book that were just world building for world building's sake, with very little consequence that felt immediate. In Rhythm of War, crap gets busy fast and it gets serious right away. And by things getting serious, I mean we deal with some seriously heavy topics and we spend a lot of time going over those topics. In addition, with a lot of focus on mental health for characters, we also get a lot of exploration of more gray themes than we've ever seen before. I feel like we started exploring that a little bit in Words of Radiance, a lot more in Oathbringer. It fully explodes here, where we, now that we understand a lot more of the forces at play in this world, have a lot more conflicts, and we get to share these conflicts with the characters as they're trying to figure out what they should do given the opportunities in front of them with the knowledge they have, and it's difficult. Characters are getting pushed to their limits at the same time that we are learning a lot of significant details about the way that the magic in this world works, in a never before seen level of depth. And along with that depth comes one of my favorite parts. Now that I've spent this last year catching up on the Cosmere, Rhythm of War is the example of why it is useful to know more things about the Cosmere, because Rhythm of War is the most bold and upfront with tying in all the different elements of the Cosmere that we've seen thus far together into an explosive package that doesn't require you to have read the Cosmere, but we are getting extremely close to when I think that will be a necessity. Because the larger themes at place in this connected universe between all of Brandon Sanderson's books is becoming more and more prevalent, and things are starting to leak through the cracks into serious and not just like Easter egg theorizing ways, but seriously important ways that will become relevant to the story at large. Earlier I did a review for Dawnshard, and unfortunately the crazy awesome elements of Dawnshard that I talked about don't come into play as much as I wish they did into this book, but those elements combined with all of the other Cosmere elements that we see constantly throughout this book, I'm telling you, like, way more than we've ever seen before, and way more obvious and ominous ways than we've ever seen before, combined are going to probably make Stormlight 5 the massive Cosmere Avengers book we've been wanting. Like I said, it probably isn't necessary to know those things, but if you do know those things, you're going to be getting a lot more out of the story, and some of those shock moments are going to hit way harder. And like I said, it's not just a couple one-off Easter eggs, it's happening constantly throughout the story, because as we learn more about the magic in this world, we're starting to realize how they might be interconnected to the other worlds, with heavy implications that is going to matter more in this series. Now, one of the things that I will have to say about this book as a potential warning is, when you, as a reader, sign up to read an author's massive multiple thousand-page series, and it's broken up like this, there's a lot of expectations that can be set. If you remember, The Way of Kings was almost exclusively a character piece with very little plot. Words of Radiance mixed that up a little bit. Oathbringer had a lot more plot with very little character moments. This one is hard to compare to the previous two because I feel like we do get a ton of character moments, but we also get a ton of world building and plot similar to Oathbringer. The difference between this book and Oathbringer is that the pace is much better handled, and the rising and falling of action is pretty much just a constant throughout the whole book. And so whereas Oathbringer was a massive book that I felt was too long, I honestly blazed through this book and that part did not bother me. I'm sure that it will bother some people. Books this big are not for everyone, and even people that enjoy this book probably won't enjoy the length of this book, but I blazed through this one and did not really care about the length at all. I mostly just cared about what was happening and needed to read it as fast as possible, and I feel like that is important when we're comparing these books in these series. Now, it could be easy to make a lot of assumptions based on where the previous stories were going to where this one might be going, and I feel like by having those assumptions, you might be doing yourself a disservice, because this story really does take a lot of different directions that were unexpected, while still, you know, being in the same series. Like, they all make sense, but some of the choices are shocking and potentially controversial. But in a world this big, there's a lot of things to pay attention to at once, and I feel like sometimes we're going to spend more times in the certain areas and less times in other areas, and that may bother some people. But if you really are just in for the ride, and you want to see the story told to you and the world expand in significant ways, and you want an amazing setup for what I think this fifth book will be, just go along for the ride. It's worth it to me, definitely. I was constantly on the edge of my seat. I constantly needed to know what was going to happen next. I was always invested in what was going on, and the more revelations we got, the more my mind exploded. The ending in this book, instead of the traditional massive Sanderlanche, is slightly more muted and a little bit of a different tone. However, he still manages to sneak in just as many, if not more, huge revelations for this world and the rest of the series in a way that when you're done with the book, you felt like a little bit more relaxed than Oathbringer, and then you realize, oh crap, just as much, if not more, happened. Should we bring out the Did I Cry meter? Technically, if tears had to leave the eyes, no. If we're talking watering up and I had to scrunch my face to not let tears leave my eyes, 2 times. If we're talking times I got chills, 6 times maybe? It's hard to tell. So overall, I loved it. I thought it was amazing, but I feel like if you are along this journey in the Stormlight Archive, you're probably going to continue along this journey in the Stormlight Archive. It's one of those things where, like, if I've invested so much time, I feel like I've wasted that invested time if I don't invest more time. That's a bad theory of logic, but I think you should do it for this book. I think it's great. If we're talking rankings, First of all, I hate ranking books in a series. I think is very hard, but I do think that there's a lot of things, pacing wise especially, that Rhythm of War does better than Oathbringer, which is a lot of people's least favorite in the series. Really, I think it's paced better than The Way of Kings, though The Way of Kings holds a very special place in my heart for introducing me to this world and just kind of being almost a wonderful standalone story in a way. There are certain moments in this book that I feel like we're supposed to hit as hard as some of the big moments from the first three. Some of them work, some of them don't, but they didn't necessarily detract from the book. They just didn't add to it, I guess. But there's still probably going to be some people's favorite moments from the series in this book. And like I said, it's just a much easier read than the previous ones. So I guess that's my ranking. Unlike with my previous videos, I think I'm going to make a separate spoilery discussion for this one because this is the only one that's getting released like near the time of release. So be looking for a spoiler-filled video from me talking about this book in the future, the near future. If you guys are reading this book, let me know how you're enjoying it in the comments down below. Is this something that you're looking forward to? Are you excited to read this book? Are you on the fence about reading this book? Like, how did you feel about Oathbringer? If this is a series that you have not started but you want to, I highly recommend that you go back and read The Way of Kings if this sounds interesting to you. This really is an example of a massive, all-encompassing, huge, epic fantasy world with tons of different characters and ways that they interact with each other to make the story happen. And I feel like this is just another great entry that encourages people to get into this series. If you are currently reading this book and want to buddy read it with other people, I have a Discord which is linked down below, which is available for everybody. And in that Discord, there are channels labeled for Rhythm of War by section where you can go through and just post your thoughts and mark them with spoilers for the appropriate chapters. Everyone can share their thoughts there, and that's been a really fun time. People are making theories as they go, and I love seeing that. You guys know, and I've said it in my previous videos, I literally live and I'm fueled by people's Stormlight Archive reactions. It's my favorite series. If you like this video and want to see my spoilery thoughts later on, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. If you hit the bell, you'll get notified when I post new videos. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to support this channel financially, there are ways to do that down below. There's both a link to a Patreon as well as a link to a merch store where you could buy silly shirts that I've made. As always, I want to discuss this book with you guys, so please either do that in the Discord or the comments down below. I love to talk books with people, especially Stormlight Archive books. I hope you guys are having a good day, and I can't wait to talk to you again. Bye.
No one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. If it don't show up, I might get fired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired.